Hello everyone, I'm Santiago, and today I'm gonna be testing Alan Wake on the GeForce GTX 1050 2GB. For performance monitoring, I'll be using CAM. If you want to download the software, there's a link down in the description. So Alan Wake, I'll be doing 1080p, 1440p and 4K using both a G4560 and an i3-8100. To skip to those sections of the video, check the description below. So first of all, I'll show you the G4560 on 1080p using almost the maximum settings. The anti-aliasing is on 2x instead of 8x or 4x. The rest is just maxed out. Then I do the same with the i3-8100, same settings, so you can pretty much have an idea on how it's doing in comparison. From what I could see, sometimes the G4560 made the GPU be lower than 90% GPU usage. In some of those cases that meant less than 60 frames per second, but it wasn't below 50 frames per second due to the CPU, so I consider it still smooth enough. But you can clearly see a difference if you have a frame rate counter. Then I switch to 1440p and I show you two configurations. First of all, I try to get 60 frames per second. It won't be perfect, but I try to be at 60 as much as possible, excepting on a couple instances like too many effects on screen. If you use a flare gun or any flare effect, you don't have a lot of flare gun rounds, so that's usually quite a rare occurrence. That's why I don't consider it that bad, despite the big performance hit. Then I just crank up the settings at 1440p as high as possible, trying to stay over 30 frames per second. And finally at 4K, I show you just one configuration, trying to be over 30 frames per second as much as possible. But again, when you use the flare gun, it can drop below 30 frames per second very easily at that resolution. But personally, I will just play at 1080p or 1440p with tweaked settings. The game is much smoother, way easier to control with the mouse. For some reason, the mouse is very hard to control at 30 frames per second in this particular game. But if you just use a controller at 30, it's usually fine. And the first thing I recommend lowering if you want better performance is SSAO quality. That's the ambient occlusion. Usually turning that off is a 10 FPS boost, so in my opinion it's worth disabling it if you want a higher frame rate. Then shadow quality and volumetric lighting can help a little bit, but the other ones I didn't mention don't have much of a hit. Just lower those in groups and it should be a decent performance boost. And you need to have MSAA all the time. That's why the 2x option is the minimum. You cannot go below that. The game still looks fantastic, so you don't need more than 4x MSAA on this one. But yeah guys, that's pretty much it. I hope you keep enjoying the video. Thanks for watching and see you next time.
The dark presence was moving ahead of me in the same direction I was going. A cold feeling settled itself in the pit of my stomach. Was it going for Alice?
The graveyard shift may cause cancer.
Find a way to avoid electrocution.